Are we live?
Yeah, I think we're live.
All right, all right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Geopolitics in Conflict show. How are you, Elizabeth?
I am doing very well. And as promised, we
Y-
are doing our Tuesday and Thursday live streams at noon Central Time.
Yes, it
So,
is. Your word is your bond.
yeah.
So don't ever miss that out. So,
Well,
yeah,
and this time we actually have a very special show for you guys.
yeah,
And we'd love to do more of this where we're not just covering one topic, but we're actually going to cover two topics today.
that is
Because
correct.
so much is going on in the world that it's important that we get as much information out as we can.
No, indeed. So, well, we're so glad you guys are able to join us here. And I always like, I do you know what? I found live streams very exciting for me.
Really?
And the reason being because, you not only get, they call it live stream, of course, for
Mhm.
that reason, but also the interaction with our viewers.
Yeah.
That is the reason why I like that one.
I
So,
do too.
and I
do.
mean it. You know me, I don't say things just to
Yeah.
sound, if I don't mean something, I don't say it.
Oh, yeah, it's absolutely true.
I,
Oh,
so,
hey, look. All right. So we already have people telling us where they're from.
oh,
And
let's
if,
do that
yes,
first. Let's do
that
that
It's
first.
one of my favorites. So Lucio is from Montreal.
Montreal.
Glenn is from Thailand. Jack is from London.
Oh, that's Jack Robert.
Yeah, Jack
I
Robert.
know
is
it
from
is.
London. So if you guys want to share with us where you're from, we love hearing that.
That's great. That's great. So,
Hong is from UK. I know there's a bit of a lag. So
yeah, by
when
the
we
time it
ask
shows
that,
up.
yes.
Yeah, indeed. So, well, good. So, what are we going to be talking about those two topics? Let's start with the first one.
Okay, so the first one is very interesting because it's something that isn't talked about in Western or legacy media
Mhm.
almost at all, but it's a big deal. And there's some really interesting commonalities between what is happening in Kosovo and the Ukraine situation.
Interesting. Interesting.
And how much are we hearing about Kosovo?
Not a lot.
Not a lot. if
I looked
almost
around.
any.
I wasn't much. It was
Mhm.
very information, just trickles
Yeah.
here and there. And what I found was from overseas.
Yes.
I
Overseas,
didn't.
they're
Yeah.
talking about it. Let's see. Gary is from South Africa. Nameless is from Nepal. Alex is from Ukraine. Welcome.
Oh my gosh.
CJ is from Brisbane, Australia. Ronnie is from Hong Kong. Rupar is from Myanmar.
Oh my God.
This is so
Yeah, good
great.
to have you guys. Good to have you. So, well, here's the thing about this Kosovo issue. Because we all know, I'm sure, especially for our European viewers,
Right.
For European viewers, because they live in Europe.
Yeah.
You mentioned Kosovo, they will remember, I'm assuming they're old enough though, they will
Right.
remember what took place when NATO got involved. And you all know the history of NATO
Yeah.
getting involved in Kosovo back then. So there was the Pristina issue and so forth. But this one now, you start to ask yourself, why all of a sudden tensions are flaring up?
Right.
There's no sign on this.
Right.
All of a sudden you start to see tensions flaring up in the region. And here is what happened with that.
Well, so before you dive into what happened,
Yeah,
I think there's a very interesting piece of information that needs to be said.
sure.
Who all is involved in this Kosovo conflict? Which countries
Yeah,
NATO
or
or entities are involved in this?
Yeah. So you got NATO,
You got NATO,
you have the US,
US.
and you have Russia on the other end. But Russia is not involved directly in Russia
Yeah.
because Russia has always been supportive of the Serbs.
Right.
There was always funny the way I look at it, because that's the the Balkans.
Yeah.
That was always been that line that divides East and West. It's always
Right.
been, and now it's proven inside the country. And the reason being because, and I did find some information from overseas here, because the main goal was for why this past month saw the interruption
Yeah.
or the tensions flaring up socially internally is because of the political and police control of the northern part
Mhm.
of the country, and another part is populated by the Serbs.
Yeah.
So what makes it even worse is that when the government asked for a change of the license plates
Mhm.
for the cars,
Yeah.
and the Serbs kind of like, no,
No.
because they are considered sort of a part of the society. It's just they are not in line with what the Kosovo is saying.
Right.
So that's part of where that's triggering or triggering rather this kind of tensions. And
Yeah.
usually, if you look at the history of what happened back then, we're talking about the almost 2 decades, something like that.
Yeah.
When NATO gets involved, the issue became even bigger.
Well, and NATO is on the ground
As we
fighting.
speak.
Yes.
Well, NATO is always did this, and the
Yeah.
US to a degree did this. We always supported extremist groups.
Okay, that's a very important piece of information.
That is where the concern is. That's where the
because
concern.
that's not the,
Yeah.
just now there are sort of rumblings of that around the internet.
Yeah.
But that's not something that's talked about very often, right? But I want to bring up in terms of, human behavior, there are only certain groups that actually push for change, and it's unfortunately and I actually think it should be the middle that pushes for change, right? It's the people who are, the people who are really, the middle of the line, not extremes on either side.
Yeah.
But what we see is that extremes on either side are the ones who push for change, and then the rest of us just have to live with that. And that is across the board. It doesn't matter where you are.
Yeah.
It's the person who feels the strongest about something that is willing to put the time, effort, and energy into it. And so, unfortunately, but because then after they win, you get this extreme situation, you get extreme policy, you get extreme conflict, you get this extreme stuff, because the groups that are pushing for change are almost always, not always, but almost always extreme.
Yeah.
There's a problem with that.
What it is. This is exactly what it's because now it begs not the question, but you start to think in terms of the current clashes.
Yeah.
Are they, like, for example, now a reflection or a test of sort of the strength of the US and NATO inability to control the extremist groups?
Right.
Because they are the one fueling those kind of even the European Union itself, because this is at the heart of Europe.
Right.
Okay. And it becomes a question about who's going to be able to control this loyalists per se.
Right.
And this is where the danger of this, because if this, once it gets out of control, you won't be able to contain it.
Yeah.
This is exactly what happened back then.
Right.
And NATO ended up being involved and bombing certain areas that they weren't supposed to. And I do remember, I think it was some Chinese location was bombed mistakenly or something like that. I do remember the incident. It became a very, very diplomatic incident, and rightly so. You don't bomb a residency of a country, because that's considered a sovereign entity, that territory. So that's what happened with hey, I do see somebody.
I see it.
I want to say thank you. I always like to do that first, no matter what.
KL, thank you for your super sticker. We really appreciate it. We really appreciate your support, guys. Without you, we wouldn't have this channel without you.
You're absolutely correct.
We want to appreciate you, because we really do feel like you are a community. We don't always say it because it's hard for me to look through the chats, but we see you guys over and over and over again. The same people, like KL, you were there yesterday. So we want you to know that we see you, the people who are in our community.
Indeed. And I truly appreciate their continued support. So we mean it. We want you guys to know that. There's like some of our viewers asking, how come the channel doesn't have a lot of subscribers? I don't know. I can't answer.
Well, but we need your help.
Yeah, we need your help for that.
If the more you spread the word about us,
exactly,
the more people will come and find us.
Yeah, we don't have it's us.
Yeah, we
working
very small team.
That's all it is. So let's go back to our Kosovo issue, and this is where, again, for the Europeans, European Union, that is, and the US and NATO and all that, will they be able to control now those groups? That's because they're gonna be pushing. There's the interesting aspects of it.
Yeah.
Anytime, it doesn't matter which country. We haven't even here in the US. Anytime you have social tensions, and the social tensions that will be fueled by certain groups that they feel so strongly about their cause, that's usually can really lead to some, and so what's the word I'm looking for, some consequences that you won't even expect.
You know, it reminds me a lot of a
Mm.
quote. There's a quote that said, "Some of the worst and most evil deeds in humanity have been done with the best intentions." Isn't that interesting? But
Yeah.
isn't it true? You know, the people who feel that they're so right, that everyone else is completely
They're
wrong
wrong.
about this,
Yeah.
some of the worst things in history have happened because those people have had the best intentions.
Yeah, and this is the whole idea of why sometimes for us at least, and I speak
Yeah.
for myself here, you can't be sort of cherry picking the terminology or the when we are talking about a topic. You know,
Yeah.
the topics we talk about are very heavy.
They are.
You know,
They're
this is
very
not
heavy.
as I always
Yeah.
say, kitty cat's playing here.
Yeah.
So, and with that, you have to have an objective assessment for that.
Yeah.
It's because people watching whatever, it depends on your assessments, because
Yeah.
now your word matters.
Yeah.
So, and we can't be just because we happen to be Americans, well, we're not going to criticize the US. No.
Right.
We will criticize the US
Right.
if the US does wrong.
Or
We
anybody
will
else for that
criticize
matter.
China if
Yeah.
China does wrong.
Yeah.
We will criticize Australia if Australia
Right.
does wrong.
Right.
It doesn't matter, because that's how I feel what objectivity is all about.
Right.
And our credibility is in line.
Right.
And that's how I look at it. So with this Kosovo issue, this is exactly what I'm seeing right now. What I'm seeing is that you got NATO, then you got the US from behind the scenes fomenting the tensions.
Huge.
You got Russia on the other end. They wanted to support that minority there because that
Right.
has always had historical ties.
Yeah.
This is something we don't always get. We
Yeah.
don't know about history. That's like why one time I think I talked about something that this is why the West fails to understand China. You know, when I had a conversation with Dr. Hammond, remember that interview we talked about, and he was right, because he's a historian, and it's somebody I'll trust his judgment. And he's like, yeah, most of us in the West have no clue about the history of China.
Well, you know, and I it's actually really interesting that you say that, because, you know, here in the West, especially in the United States, I think this is less true in Europe.
Yeah.
But especially, and I think this is actually probably true of Australia also. The original people who were here, I remember when I was a kid, we were taught that Christopher Columbus discovered America. Discovered it with the millions of people who were already
here. Yeah. You're
right. Like that's an interesting way. And now in schools, it's taught that he opened
I know.
he opened America, right, to
the
Europe,
world.
basically. But there were already people here. And so, you know, you look at conflicts like this, and there's always a very strange gray area between, because, you know, just because a leader or a war happens, that doesn't mean that those people don't ethnically feel like whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that's right or wrong. I'm just saying, you know, the borders that we impose are not always what people feel. And historically what happens. But you're right, we don't understand that culturally at all, because the natives that were here, the United States government did not do right by them. I'll put it that way.
Oh, they committed atrocities. I'll say it straightforward. The U.S. government did commit atrocities against the Indian, the origin. You know, that's why. That's why I always had the argument with those who will say, "Oh, we don't want immigrants, whatever." I say, hold on a second. Where did you come from?
Right.
We all came from somewhere.
Right.
You know, oh, I was born here. I say, so what?
Yeah.
So what? If I trace your ancestors, they probably came from Europe, fled in the massive what was that? The potato famine and all that, and they end up here in the U.S. I said, if we are to say that argument, we all should pack our bags and leave the land to the Indians.
Right.
This is why I see, for example, the big issue in Australia with the Aboriginal people. They have the same argument. You know, the land belonged to the Aborigines, you know, and yet they've been almost discarded completely. You know, shame on.
It's the same situation here.
Exactly.
Absolute same situation here. And so it's very interesting, but it's very interesting to me that the United States is involved in this conflict at all.
Well,
So
I'm not
that's my
surprised.
question.
I'm not
Why?
surprised.
Why is the United States involved in this conflict at all?
It's
There's a great question about why is the United States involved in the Ukraine crisis also.
Yeah, well, for the Kosovo thing is because anything to keep Europe down. Remember
Right.
the motto of NATO. You know what the motto of NATO is? You know, keep the Americans in,
Yeah.
keep the Germans out.
Yeah.
What was it? Keep the Americans in. No,
Keep the
US
Russians
in,
out? Yeah.
Russia. I'm lost. Russia out, American in,
Europeans down.
and German down.
Yeah.
Somewhere
and
around
Germans
that.
down.
My
Yeah.
apologies for I kind
Yeah.
of too much going on in my brain right now. As
Well,
far
we get very passionate.
well, it's because that's geopolitics. That's how
Right.
I always perceive it, because I've always have the heart for
Yeah.
geopolitics. Because here's the thing, to me personally, again,
Yeah.
if you don't do something with passion, don't do it.
Right.
Straightforward.
Well, and especially the amount that it takes to run this channel. Like, you guys, you don't know. This is really a labor of love. It's because
Yeah.
we really care about what's happening in the world. But, we maybe make it look easy, but it's
not.
It's
So-
not easy
So,
to do.
so when
this.
to go back to that question of what the U.S. involved, you look at it in terms of Ukraine, and this is we're
Yeah.
gonna get into this as
Yeah.
far as how this could be a prelude to
Right.
what might happen in Ukraine moving
Right.
forward. It's because for us, the Americans, we want to ensure that Europe never find safety,
Yeah.
never be in peace. Despite what you hear,
That's
I know,
horrible.
you will
Yeah.
think for us, well,
Yeah.
us are the citizens, they are not,
Right.
we're not the government.
No.
And even the government, there are entities behind closed doors that
Right.
manages the trajectory of the U.S. foreign policy.
Because I actually genuinely believe that there are people in the government who are really trying to do the right thing.
They are.
Who
They are.
also see what's happening and who are really trying to do the right thing. And I think you're absolutely right that there are entities behind the scenes
Yeah.
that are undermining the people who are trying to do
I
it.
can tell you from not a story, but a real life example just
Yeah.
happened a few months ago, before the bombing or the attack on Nord Stream 2.
Mhm.
There were individuals
Yeah.
in both Central Intelligence Agency
Yeah.
and the State Department
Right.
warning against
Right.
this, saying, don't do that.
Yeah.
That's a suicide.
Yeah.
And their advice was ignored. It's no different than what I did when I was in the government at that time about the invasion of Iraq.
Yeah.
I said, don't do it.
Yeah.
It was ignored.
Right.
So
Well, unfortunately, those people are not the people who are making the decision.
that's the unfortunate thing,
And we said this. We have a course, guys, and we have a members Q&A
Yes.
where we get on Zoom. It's a small group of people. We get on Zoom and we have these conversations. And if you want to check it out, geopoliticsandconflict.com, and that will also be extended. We have a government course coming that David is going to teach, but. We get on and have these conversations, and we had one right before this live stream.
Yeah.
And that there are legitimately good people, and there really are hidden hands that people don't see and don't know about. And the more we've traveled, the more we've talked to you guys, you guys are the informed ones. You guys are the ones that are out there, seeking the truth, who really want to know what's going on. But most people aren't like that. And the impression of how the United States government works around the world has been shockingly wrong in my experience, talking to people that are not you guys, and you probably see it in your friends and family.
Yeah.
But when we were in Poland
Yeah.
very long ago, we did a show from there. But one of the things that I heard a lot was this, and to me this was wild, was that Joe Biden was going to save them.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I heard that from a couple of people who are very
Yeah.
close to me,
Yeah.
that the U.S. government and Joe Biden was going to save them if something happened, right? So like if something happened with Russia, that the U.S. government and Joe Biden specifically was going to save them. And Joe Biden just fell down,
Yeah.
right?
Poor guy.
He's having very clear issues reading teleprompters, and his approval rating here in the United States
Yeah.
is very, very low. But they didn't know any of that. They didn't watch him fall down. They don't get the footage of him stumbling over
Yeah.
his words. They don't get the fact that the White House press corps basically has to go back behind him and say, "Oh, he didn't really mean to say
I
that."
mean, that one.
Right?
Yeah.
They don't get to see all of that. And so the understanding that the US is going to come save anybody
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
not in their interest to save, that's in my opinion, that's a bit of a dangerous way to think.
Well, this is where some Asian countries like Philippines, like South Korea, like Japan, Australia are making the mistake.
Right.
Because I tell you this, should they bear a conflict, they will be at the front line.
Right.
They are not, and I'll say
Right.
this, they are not realizing the severity of what are they getting themselves into.
Yeah.
So, and that's another topic for another day.
And I also want to be clear, like I love being American. I love the people here. There are good people here.
Yeah.
And it's not about the people. The people of any country
Yeah.
are not responsible for what's happening, because even our elected officials are arguably not responsible. And this is also a conversation that we had, that, you know, we have the illusion of choice. In fact, I think most of us have the illusion of choice, because it's not like every person off the street can go and be a congressman or woman. It's not like Joe Blow off the street can go be the president of the United States. You have to have a lot of money, and most people don't have that.
Yeah, and political
backup.
Yeah, that's
and
true.
So we don't have the choice of every good person in the world to be our elected officials.
Yeah.
We have the choice between basically two people, right? Whoever each party decides to put forth. Is that really choice? In a sense it is, but in a sense it's not.
Well, that's why the issue with our democracy. I mean, how would you call this democracy?
Yeah.
And I intend to address these aspects of it, because if we are to say in a democracy, how can you only have choices between two parties?
And that's a great
And in
question.
a democracy, one of the hallmark of it is choices. Well, how come we only have two parties?
Right.
And most Americans have no clue that both political parties been controlling the political process in the US for over 150 years.
Yeah.
We'll get into that in a course when we talk. Let me, before I forget, to go back to your question about why the US is involved. It's because, as I said again, Europe has the US wants to ensure the dependency of Europe on the United States. You look at it no further than what's going on in Ukraine. That's the whole saga of how Ukraine started. And this is why we lead us to ask the question, could Ukraine follow in the footsteps of what's going on in Kosovo? Because what happened back then and what is happening right now in Kosovo is that you get some groups being armed. This is where I see the problem. And the idea of the future of Ukraine, could we be seeing the same? And because you get now, in addition to Crimea, you got the 4 other regions, the Donetsk area and so forth, is now the West going to be pushing for groups to create, tensions and, hit and run operations per se? Because this is exactly what happened back then in Kosovo and what is happening now. And for the way we look at it, we wanted to look at it from both ends. The political aspects, we want to ensure that there's always chaos politically in Europe. And economically, we never wanted the Europe or European continent, that is, to get closer to Russia. Because as they get closer to Russia prior to the military operations in Ukraine, the economy of Europe was doing well.
Yeah.
That's what's at the heart of it. So we thought about, how can we do this? Remember, we did a video when we said in it that the US threatened to sanction Germany.
Right.
And what did I say back then? What the heck is wrong with Washington sanctioning an ally? Yeah. That was the reason why, because they never wanted Germany to get closer. This is why the German economy, sooner or later, if this issue of energy is not resolved, it's going to collapse. Mark my word on it, despite what you hear.
And it's very odd watching Germany close down nuclear power plants. And, now that we have the Nord Stream situation that happened. So it's and then, sanctioning oil from Russia. it, you said this, and I think that it's maybe the most important thing you've said in a very long time.
Well, I hope I
And
said more than
you
that.
say, you say a lot of very important things. You say a lot of very important things.
Oh,
But that a stable, peaceful Europe
you're right.
makes its own choices.
You're right.
And a Europe that is always in chaos, that is always, that's doing really well, that's not a manipulatable situation. That's not a manipulatable Europe. And that in its own way kind of breaks my heart. If I'm being honest, that's pretty terrible.
Yeah, but at the same, it's therefore the goal of taking a stand.
Right.
To me, and I don't feel emotions towards a certain topic, especially when it comes down to this.
I feel a little sad.
Well, it's all right. But the goal of taking a stand, it's because if they are to look for the interest of their people, they know those leaders in the European Union, they know and knew that the policies they were embarking on are going to harm the citizens. You look at no further now that, for example, inflation in UK. And I remember Jack Robert one time, he wrote something. Remember that, Jack? When you mentioned to me about inflation is going up so high in the UK, he's on the ground there. I remember other viewers from Australia. Saying, so to me, it was like, if the European leaders are so weak, that's a reflection on the system itself.
Right.
They couldn't take a stand.
Right.
Despite what it was before. I had great respect for Angela Merkel. You know why? Angela Merkel was an Atlantist. In other words, she believes in the U.S. Euro relations, Atlantic stuff. But she was always in a position when she wanted to say no. She will say to the Americans, no, we are not.
She was strong.
She was. This current chancellor is so weak. And is a reflection on the whole European Union. Way back, a couple of years ago, I was passing through Paris, I remember. And I have family lives in Paris. And we were talking, and at that time, we're talking about 2004, 2005. It was a conversation about France government at that time was circulating not a rumor, but some sort of hypothetical proposal of building a European security entity independent from NATO. And I heard that back then. And I was talking to my family. I was like, is the president here in France hallucinating or what? I knew back then they won't be able to do it anyway. So what are he talking about? And it shows you right there how much we wanted to keep Europe down. Keep the US in, Germans out, and Europe down. That's the one. So that's to me where I see suddenly tensions in Kosovo flaring up. Wait a minute. What's behind all this?
Right.
And this again leads us to talk about how Ukraine could be following the process. Because even though now you are hearing in Ukraine that, no, those groups are not under the control of the West. Nonsense. It's nonsense. Because if I am to tell you who blew up the dam, we all see this movie before. Oh, it was Russia that did it. It turns out to be, it's like what happened with Nord Stream 2.
Right.
As a matter of fact, now, just FYI for you guys to know, the intelligence community in the US, you know what they're saying? And I have my own contacts. You know what they're saying? They're saying now we have concluded that it was the Ukraine that conducted the attack on Nord Stream 2 because the intelligence community had information 3 months prior.
I mean, this was known. This is not.
It's kind of like, come
radar,
on.
And, we know
like
what planes left where, but at the very beginning, they were like,
Russia did it. So
Russia blew up its own pipeline
that
it literally could have just turned
the spigot off. And this is exactly where I see the issue with could what's taking place in Kosovo be replicated in Ukraine? Because the groups right there that they are saying, well, we are not under the control of the West. I don't buy that.
Well,
because
the West is heavily involved and NATO's heavily involved.
Well, we're the one providing the intelligence.
Right.
How do you think they move around? We're the one providing the intelligence. It's no different than what we did in Yemen with back then Saudi Arabia. We were providing intelligence. As a matter of fact, some operations were flown by some Americans. So, and this leads to the
That's
question.
definitely a gray
Yeah,
area.
and this leads to the question of Ukraine getting F-16s,
Yeah.
which we all know is nothing
Well,
but a
and
hype.
my biggest issue with Ukraine and getting F-16s, right, is how long it takes the Ukrainian pilots to learn how to fly them. Does that, right, 3 years,
3 to 4.
right?
Yes.
So we're already a year in. We're, I guess, a little over a year in
Yeah.
at this point. How much longer is this going to go on? And the problem with that, how much longer it's going to go on, is because the Ukrainian people, like you said, the Ukrainian people are on edge, and understandably so. There is a conflict happening in their country.
In the country.
Right? They're displaced. They're leaving their ancestral homes. I mean, they're the ones that continue to suffer. And also Europe and also the United States. We have a huge debt crisis here. And
That's for sure.
we have sent, what is it, $100 trillion over there? 100 billion. Sorry.
100 billion.
Sorry.
Over
100 billion.
100,
Yeah, obviously.
10 to be exact.
110 billion. And, and the EU is not only bearing, especially Poland, right? Poland, but a lot of other countries in Europe are taking on the refugees. These are small countries. Where it's actually a substantial part of their population is now Ukrainian because of the Ukrainian refugees. And so, they're doing the best that they can with them. Like Poland, for example, I think is genuinely doing the best they can with the refugees. But the people are not happy with what the government is doing.
I talked to some too.
Yeah.
At some point, and they're like, sort of, we don't understand.
Right.
The government's taking away from us and giving to others.
Yeah.
That just doesn't make sense. The government is there for you to serve its citizens, not to take away from them. And I mean, it's no different than what's going on right now in UK. You know how bad the economy in the UK is?
Yeah.
And the government is not even disclosing anything.
Yeah.
No different than what's going on in Australia.
Right.
Australia is going so bad.
And here.
And here, of course.
Here is not fun. The inflation is not an enjoyable situation here.
Well, you got the key issue with those two. You got the inflation and you got the high interest rate. Yeah. This is why
super high interest rate.
Europeans are massively hit with this. Yeah. And this is where just to move into the economic aspects of these tensions and all that, because it is going to impact the economic outlook, not only in Kosovo, but the whole Europe for that matter.
Well, so you're right. So our next topic today is we're talking about the fact that China has been saying no to U.S. diplomats. So saying no to talking to Lloyd Austin, for example, at the Shangri-La. But they're not saying no to everyone, are they?
That's correct, because
not
the Commerce Secretary was denied a meeting.
Right. Yeah. The Commerce Secretary was denied a meeting.
There were actually 3.
But Elon Musk was welcomed with open arms, as is Tim Cook, who is the CEO of Apple. So we have Elon Musk and we have Tim Cook.
Yeah.
And they are welcomed with open arms into China.
Yeah, here are the 3. And I got it here on the record. The U.S. Treasury Secretary, the U.S. Secretary of State, and the Trade Representative and Commerce Secretary issued a request to visit China, all of which were denied. And Elon Musk and Tim Cook, the business moguls, were all treated with high regard when they came to China.
And met with high-level officials.
I saw the conversation yesterday of Elon Musk, and he was, by the way, wearing a suit and tie.
He was,
because out of respect, that's usually you can't show up in jeans.
Well,
like Zelensky showing up.
Zelensky's,
and that is an idiot. I'll say straightforward. I don't shy away from it. Comedian doesn't understand the world of diplomacy. Yeah, how can you become a president when you're a comedian? It's a reality. You don't have a grasp. You don't have an understanding. If you really care about your country, why would you put it into what's going on right now?
No, absolutely. Yeah. Well, and it's been accused that's a costume, more or less.
Yeah.
Right. That he wants to put out a particular persona, and that persona is,
toughness and all that stuff.
Right.
Yeah,
he's the warrior who always wears the war garb, and So, because he could wear a suit.
Yeah.
That's
He's gonna go down in history as the worst ever. Anyway, let's get back to our.
Ukraine's had a very sordid past in terms of leaders too. A lot of people.
Well, which one?
Ukraine.
Yeah,
Ukraine had
yeah.
a very
Before,
sordid
well,
past
it's
with leaders.
kind of yeah, but at the same time, if we are to be fair,
Yeah.
they were fine till 2014.
Yeah.
I mean, let's just say straightforward. It's because the elections that took place at that time, only the 50% of it so far showed 95%.
Yeah.
When it comes down to Crimea,
Yeah.
wanted to be aligned with Russia.
Yeah.
I looked at the stats. I disclosed them in my book with the reference where I got it.
Yeah.
And you know what else I found? Is that the State Department allocated $5 million to some groups inside Ukraine for that purpose. It was at the time when Victoria Nuland was advocating. And even our vice president at that time, who is the current president, had some hand into that.
Yeah.
So we gotta call it fair. So,
Yeah.
so that's where I see the issue. So now back to our China as to why.
Elon Musk in China.
Why is China is welcoming Elon Musk and Tim Cook, but shutting down the door on government representatives?
The way that China has conducted itself has been economic.
That's true.
We had this conversation, maybe in our last recorded video, maybe in our last live stream, that, there are multiple ways to dominate. And one of them is economic. And that appears to be how China has actually built itself up to where it is right now, is it's focused on the economics, arguably to the detriment of its own people in a lot of ways, because I know that a lot of what happened to build up their economics, to produce cheap goods. And this, I believe, is less the case today than it was. But,
But wait. I will wait. I will challenge you on that word, to the detriment of their people.
Yeah.
But isn't that China government that raised the poverty, people from poverty?
Yes, but
so how would you use that term?
Here's how I'm using it. Okay?
How?
Because, for example, and this is something that manufacturers here in the United States did. So there were laws against certain chemicals being used here in the United States to manufacture goods. Those laws didn't exist in China at the time. And so we sent toxic manufacturing over to China so that their workers.
Well, that becomes no. I'm still gonna challenge you on this.
Right, okay.
It's because it will depend on the Chinese government to decide whether they want to accept that or not. When we have coal, where do we send coal before? We send it to China, right?
To process it.
Well, it's because
it's very dirty.
Yeah, but at the same time, how can we be blaming other countries when we are the one looking for their services? We couldn't do it here. You look at just what happened with the oil prices here. So why did President Biden shut down the Keystone pipeline as soon as he became president?
Question.
So it's kind of, to me, I look at it, if China is willing to take that, then by no means. But they're going to have to make profit out of it.
Right.
But at the same time, they raised their population from poverty.
And
you give them credit. You gotta
definitely give them credit for that.
Look at the poverty we have here in the U.S. in San Francisco. You saw the images of San Francisco recently.
Well, I've spent a lot of time in California.
So you know how,
unfortunately,
you know how it is.
Yeah.
So how come we don't even have decent infrastructure?
No, and
it's
driving on the roads. I was with my partner yesterday, and we were driving down the road, and I asked him to take one highway versus another highway, because we have two major highways that we could have gotten to where we were getting to. One was you have to pay a lot of tolls, and it's very expensive. This is not a cheap road to drive on. Europe has a lot of the same thing. France's toll roads are unbelievably expensive, but so that road, because it's so expensive, it was well maintained, versus a public highway that I had popped so many tires on potholes on the public highway that I didn't want to take it, because I didn't want to lose any more tires, because the infrastructure on the public highway, the public highway was so bad that you're at risk of messing up your car by driving on it. And so, we absolutely, our infrastructure here is crumbling. You know, if you even if you go into any of our public schools, there most of them are so run down. And you know, you go even a lot of our office buildings, are so old and run down at this point that people don't want to work in them. Like, you know, you drive even in big cities, you drive down and you see these defunct buildings, right? So I'm not saying that. So I do understand that, you know, China has really built itself up. I am not arguing that. What I am arguing is that I do believe, because, you know, we say, I want it to be like a balanced conversation about, you know, the pros and cons, the pluses and minuses. What I'm not saying is that it's my choice or business to tell China how to do anything.
That's
right?
true. Yeah.
They did it the way that they felt was the right way.
Yeah.
Do I think do I personally think that some of it was wrong in the ways that, you know, I also think this is the West's issue too. For instead of changing the manufacturing to being healthy for the planet and for the people who are doing the manufacturing, instead of figuring out a way to do that in a healthy way, they sent it to China so that somebody else could do it in the bad, toxic way, right? Including coal. So instead of really focusing on, let's say, nuclear power or some other green energy, we send our coal over there for them to do that. So, but what I'm not saying is that I should be the one to tell them not to do that or whether that's right or wrong. I'm not saying that, but I think it's important to look at how a country builds their economy and how a country builds their workforce, because there's a reality to that too that isn't pretty, but the results are much better for them overall. It did bring them out of poverty to take those dirty jobs.
Yeah, but also, well, wait a minute. But also, you can't ignore the role of the government into all this.
Sure,
it was
I agree. It's the government that's doing it.
So it becomes a well-structured government that is implementing sound policies that's leading to good results.
Yes.
That's the way I see it.
Yes. And I do agree with that. I do agree with that.
So if we are to say it's because the policy is implemented by an efficient government that is working for the people.
I do agree with that. But there are things that I think should be paid attention to in terms of how that was achieved. And please hear me, I'm not saying that I'm the one who should tell them to do
no. I understand that argument. Yeah.
But, you know, when we're looking at policy, policy affects people.
That's true.
Right?
Yeah.
You can't separate policy from people. You also can't separate policy from economics. And what it does seem that happened is that policy was geared towards raising China's economy, which they did. They did do that very efficiently.
Yeah, well, their policies, because they tend to be long term.
Yes.
This policy you're talking about,
they played the long game.
In my current research about the book I'm doing, they started on this back in this early 70s.
Yeah, it's been a long time. Absolutely.
There is one of the things that we in the West are having a hard time accepting. How come a country within the span of about 35 years be able to rise to prominence?
Because they took the things that nobody else wanted to do, or that labor laws in the Western world wouldn't allow.
But also they had successful policies implemented. You know, that comes with the territory. They took on those jobs because they needed to build the infrastructure for their country. So sometimes you have to do as we always call it, the manual work, labor, for you to build whatever. And that's what China, I believe, did. And that was the first decade when they started to implement that policy. This is why you are seeing China today. It's different than when it was during Mao and Mao Zedong and all that. It's completely different. And I think what's at the heart of the matter in the West not accepting is not this fast change that took place within this span. And we are not willing to accept this, let alone we are finding out that we can't compete.
We absolutely can't compete.
That's
you and I
100%
agree on that. The United States cannot
we
compete.
Can't.
And even when it comes to, like we were talking about earlier in this episode, that, you know, we can't repatriate our manufacturing. We
no,
can't.
It's not
and
coming.
Not only that, we don't have the people to do that. So here in the United States, and this is one thing I do think that China did very well. I personally don't. I've said this a bunch of times. I don't want the Chinese system here. I don't think it would work for us.
It won't work. It won't work for us. Yes.
But one of the things that they did very well is things like manufacturing are
Mhm.
not beneath them. And here in the United States,
I see your point.
here in the United States, our young people, us, my generation, was taught that manufacturing, that technical skills
Uh-huh.
were beneath you to do, and that has caused very serious repercussions where there's no one to fix cars, there's no one to fix
Yeah.
air conditionings, there's no one to do these jobs that are skilled technical
Yeah, yeah.
jobs that
Yeah.
pay very well, but manual labor is beneath you as a young person. You have to go to university, you have to get
Yeah.
20, 30, 40, 50, 100, 200, $300,000 in
In,
student
in
loan
that,
debt
yes.
to be able to go
I
work
see your
in an
point.
office job,
Yeah.
right? And so that thinking shot the United States in the foot so substantially,
Yeah.
because the people who build the infrastructure and keep the infrastructure running, we have shortages
Yeah.
in those people. We don't need more people to go work in offices. And
Yeah.
with Chat GPT and AI right now, a lot of those jobs, because everyone was pushing software. You know what can write software now? Good software.
Yeah.
You know what people are now making millions of dollars off of is software written by Chat GPT.
Yeah. Yeah.
Code written by Chat
Yeah.
GPT.
And this, all what you just said, fall back to my original point.
Mm-hmm.
A sound policy.
Yeah.
A sound policy will lead to the results.
Yeah.
So for us, it was a failed policies. That's why we are living the outcome we are living.
Yeah.
So that's the reason, by the way, guys, this is why we're talking about this here, because we care for our country.
Yeah.
Yeah, it pains
It's the
me.
truth,
I'll say
yeah,
it. It
yeah.
pains me to see where my country is headed.
Well, it not only pains me, but it also scares me, if I'm being honest.
So
The more I talk to people here in the United States, the more people tell me I want to go find some land and live in a commune, because it's harder and harder to live in big cities here. It's harder and harder to watch poverty rise. It's harder and harder to be so stressed out. Everyone is so stressed out all the time.
And historically, those are signs for the beginning of the end. So let me answer one fundamental question here as to the reasons to why, for example, China now is turning down officials. We all know, you all know, with the recent the Shangri-La dialogue, when China turned down the request by the U.S. for the Secretary of Defense to meet, and the idea is for China to sort of express, is my opinion, for China to express his attitude towards how they see the business world versus, if China in this case, to welcome Elon Musk with this kind of, because he was treated like a government official, and he made it clear he is not there on behalf of the U.S. government. I listened to the
he's there for
business,
for his business.
absolutely. And China welcomed that because it's going to become a win-win situation between the two. As a matter of fact, there are some articles that I read as far as the EV, the
electric
vehicles, that China is going to be the hotbed for, or the market for. So Elon Musk doesn't want to miss on that opportunity. Tim Cook, when he was asked way back about banning something, I think about China, he said, heck no, I'm not going to do it because the manufacturer produced that stuff in China. So right there, it gives you an idea as to what China is thinking in terms of developing its economy.
And it's interesting that you bring that up, because both Tim Cook and Elon Musk have been very, very careful about not saying anything disparaging about China. And Elon Musk is a very divisive person in the United States now, especially with Twitter, and he's become a little bit outspoken here about politics. But he has been very, very careful over the years to not say anything bad or disparaging about China. And the reality is that I think both Tim Cook and Elon Musk have aligned values in terms of economics first.
Yeah.
You know, we look at people like Elon Musk, and it's interesting because we've done a couple of videos on
Mhm.
him
Mhm.
a few months ago when all the Twitter stuff was going on, because you know, he came out and was like, I'm gonna put free speech back on Twitter.
Ah.
Well, that's an interesting deal. But we all forget that Elon Musk really built a lot of what he's built off of government contracts, off of defense contracts.
Especially, yeah. Yeah.
And so he is a very interesting character.
Yeah.
But the economic bridge between the United States and China is, I think, the thing that is going to save us from an actual conflict. So in that way, I actually very much
Yeah.
support it.
Yeah,
What do
because
you think of that?
well, because Elon Musk is not a saint. I
He
don't
is
I don't
for
favor
sure
the
not a
guy
saint.
in a positive light,
Yeah.
you know. As a matter of fact, one day I tweeted to him directly.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not sharing with you guys. I tweeted him directly and I said,
Yeah.
"Are you a fraud?"
Yeah. Well,
It's just straightforward. It's because I was aware of the contracts that I was involved in. I was also aware of the programs he was involved in with the Pentagon. So it's kind of
people
if
don't really talk about that very
well,
much.
yeah, if you are to say you are helping humanity, how
Yeah.
come you are creating or paving the way for a software system that will, or launching a satellites that will be keeping an eye on everybody? So
Yeah,
where is
yeah,
this
yeah,
care for humanity? What happened to that privacy per se?
right.
You know, like we are hearing right now that the government is thinking, our government here is thinking about putting cameras in every household. You
Which
believe
gives
that?
me chills.
Well, actually, they did a survey and found that almost people, 29% approve of that. That's scary.
That's terrifying.
It is scary. That shows you how
Yeah.
delusional people are and ill-informed. So I think personally, again, China's looking at it in terms of the business aspect.
Yeah.
Elon Musk and Tim Cook and the likes will be looking. You know who was also in China?
Who?
Jamie Dimon. You know
Yeah,
who Jamie Dimon is?
was
Is the head of the
absolutely,
JP Morgan.
yeah.
What the heck is Jamie Dimon doing over there?
It's because
Exactly.
economics.
Exactly.
It's because the
Exactly.
people who are focused on economics
Yeah.
seem to be banding together. And I don't know what to think about that, if I'm being honest. That seems like a good thing and also terrifying in its own right. Because, you know, I've talked about this before.
Yeah.
I don't want a one world government. I think that is a bad idea.
Yeah.
But the reality is that there are people behind the scenes, and they may be upfront people, right? So like Elon Musk, like Tim Cook, like, you know, the people that they met with in China that are actually running how we do things. Because one thing that China seems to be very clear on is they understand that it's actually corporate interests that make the decisions. Because it is here in the United States, especially, corporate interests are who make the choices.
Yeah, well, at the same time, is the government will be working. To me, any government in that, based on what you said, it will make more sense for it to be working in conjunction with the private sector. So that's to me will be the.
Well, so Ray Dalio brings up a very I quote him every so often because I really genuinely like his work. I think it's well researched. I think it's well thought through, and it makes a lot of sense with what we're observing happen in the world right now. But what he talks about is that you know, what we call the military-industrial complex actually has existed throughout all of time, where it's the combination of the military, the large corporate interests, and the government. Because the government, basically its job is to ensure the growth of the corporate interests, and the military is there to protect that, to protect the trade routes, to protect the interests in certain countries. It's just we haven't been taught that that's happening. So we think, oh, it's this crazy thing, there's no way that could be happening. That's actually been the case throughout history. All of history that we know of.
That's true.
Throughout every single empire, those relationships exist. And they exist because, you know, as a country's growth is only as good as the growth of its economy.
Yeah.
That's it. If our companies failed, like if our companies here in the United States failed, our country would fail. And so the government and the military historically, in whatever, this happened with the British, this happened with the Dutch, it happened with everyone before that. So if those interests weren't protected, what would happen?
Yeah.
And
that is explained now why we are fomenting conflicts.
Right.
It's, you know, like
which is terrible.
Yeah, it's terrible, but it's a reality that's been going on since 1952. You know?
Here it's been going, yeah.
So that was the decision that was made back then. You got the Korean War, the Vietnam War, Gulf One, Gulf Two, Afghanistan, and now Ukraine.
Yeah.
And they're working on the next
Taiwan,
one. Yeah. So that's the sad part. And this is where the idea of becomes as to the root causes of why all of a sudden China will turn down
Yeah.
official representative of the government, but will welcome the idea of a meeting with business leaders in whatever country. So and because it's the contempt, because how it is perceived
Right.
as the enemy.
Right.
We gotta call a spade a spade. We have to find a way of categorizing a country,
Yeah.
because we have to label a country to.
Yeah.
This is how we did with, for example, the war after September 11th. We had to put a category to it. So
Right.
when that era phased, we have to come up with the new enemy.
Right.
The new enemy became the Russia. The new enemy
Right.
became China. So we don't know what the next enemy is going to be.
Right.
And that's how usually we've always been. So China reached the point where it says enough is enough.
Yeah.
So,
But China is a dangerous enemy to have. And I think it's because we are so economically tied to China that we shoot both of ourselves in the foot,
Yeah.
as well as the rest of the world. So my question is, what is the US government's end game really when it comes to having these little escalations that are getting
yeah.
a little bit more heated? What is the end game?
You want me to tell you?
Right?
You want me to tell you? It's not about the end game, in my opinion.
Yeah.
It's about the failure of a policy.
Okay.
To me, it's a reflection of the failure of the policy. We don't have a policy. We don't have a strategy. We don't have.
Yeah.
So when you don't have a policy, you tend to embark on whatever.
Yeah.
This is why we are reacting to events as they move along. So the idea of, when you think about this issue of China, it would have make more sense if we would have had a strategy that deals with China.
Right.
We don't, because
we
you
don't.
got the right hand inside the government. Our government doesn't know what the left hand is doing.
Right.
The chaos inside the US government, there are those who think is that our government work cohesively.
Oh no,
Oh no,
absolutely not.
oh no. As one who was inside Washington,
Yeah.
I saw with my own eyes,
Yeah.
and I kind of I don't want to be part of this. I'm
And
done.
in some cases,
I'm
like
done.
to real detriment.
Oh, it's,
things have happened that
Yeah.
that one branch knew about that didn't tell the other about, and
That's the common
yeah.
norm there,
and bad things happen because of it.
Yeah, and it becomes a question of you looking at the people in charge, and they're lacking experience, they're lacking substance, and you said to yourself, oh my gosh, those are the individuals making a decision for our country. Will be concerned.
Well,
So
and I think in a lot of
that's-
cases they aren't the people making
No,
those decisions.
they are the conduit to
Yeah.
it. There is like we always say, there is the hidden hand
Right.
that is managing how the US policies are designed and all that
Well,
stuff.
if
But
they could manage it better, that would be lovely.
that would
That's
be
a
even
joke.
better.
That's a
Yeah,
joke,
yeah.
right?
It will even be better if they don't even get involved.
Yeah, that would.
And
That would
let
probably be
people
the best.
decide. Yeah, there are competent people in America. You know that?
Absolutely.
There are.
And I actually feel like we were talking about earlier. There
Yeah.
are competent people in government.
Yeah.
It's just those aren't the ones.
Yeah.
Those aren't the people in power.
Their
Those
voice.
aren't the people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Their voice will not be heard. So, and this is where, just to put this in perspective, as far as the idea of why will China will welcome the business leaders, but not the. And I think also it's a reflection of the new geopolitical landscape
Yeah.
that is shifting. Once it shifts, there is nothing you can do about it.
No, and it's already shifting. Don't you think?
It is. It's already, yeah. And we having a hard time accepting this reality, because we have been at the top of every packing order since World War II.
Yeah.
And it's coming to an end.
It is.
It's a reality.
Oh, we have a couple of super stickers that I didn't acknowledge earlier.
It's your fault.
I know.
It's your fault.
We just get so heated.
I know.
Mr. Kai Kong, thank you very much for your super sticker. And check out who we got. Osiris.
Oh, thank you
Thank you.
very much, Osiris.
And I want to I see TNT. I see that I'm just in the chat right now, so I'm looking at this. So TNT, really competent people in the US government where? So David, talk about the Nord Stream situation and the fact that there are people. So, when you look at the United States government, all you see are the figureheads, right? You see Congress people, you see, oh, hey, we lost David.
That's all right. I'm still here. You guys still can hear me, right?
Yes.
That's it. That's fine.
Probably still.
Yeah, you know what I look like, so it's not an issue.
Well, anyway, so there are people who are in the government who are not in the power positions.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people who work in each of these branches of the government. Those are not the people who are making the decisions.
That's true. So in this case, the competent people, when the plan was being hatched as far as attacking Nord Stream 2, which was about a year and a half prior, there were some individuals inside the CIA and State Department. They were saying, no, that would not be a smart thing to do. But the national security team at the time under Jake Sullivan said, no, we are proceeding with this.
Yeah.
So those competent people, they only can do what they can because the chain of command, that's just the norm for it. So there are competent people there. It's just the way it is. So I had the same arguments during the invasion of Iraq. But again, once he reached the vice president, that's it. The conversation ends there because is the high authority. That's
right.
I'm a former military, and there is something called the chain of command.
Right.
So that's usually what it is.
Anyway,
so
we're getting David's camera back online.
Here I am back here. So
and guys,
I don't know what happened.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we would like for you guys to help us with topics that you want, because we're coming up on an hour.
Yes.
But send us topics that you want. Tweet us. David has a Twitter. Let's see if I can find it. So David has a Twitter. Tweet him. Comment on these videos and let us know what topics you'd like to see us do.
Yeah.
We want to be able to do these live streams for you guys every
we do them twice a week.
Yep, twice a week.
Twice a week. Yeah,
so,
that's what we're gonna be doing.
We're about to get David back, guys.
No, it's all right. Yeah.
No, we're about to do it. It's coming. We're real people, guys.
That's all right. So how about if we answer one or two questions briefly here? And because I have to go I have one research that I need to get for my live stream for tomorrow. I'm doing a live stream on the other channel tomorrow. So if you get a chance to join me tomorrow for the live stream on the other channel, I'm going to do one tomorrow.
All right. So. One question, guys. One question. Let's see if I can scroll up and see one of them. And if you guys have a question, please type it in the box because that is what I'm going to ask. Let me see if I can find one. You guys, there's a lot of really great... Okay. Oh, that's interesting.
Here I am back.
Yes, so, David is back.
We have to thank the person behind the scenes who was doing all this.
All right, let's see. We got a question. I'm sorry, guys. I cannot even process the amount of chats here. Okay. Well, you know what, David? Let me ask a question.
Yeah.
What do you think the most important takeaway is from, oh, wait, we got one. This is a really great question. Harry C. Question. What is the real reason that China refuses to meet with U.S. officials?
Wow, that is a poignant one. Well, it's I would say the more the U.S. promotes anti-China stuff, the more China is convinced there will be no need to sit down and talk.
Yeah.
And second thing is China is convinced that when we sit down, we're not going to sit down on an equal footing.
Yeah.
So what's the point? So China's saying I don't want to waste my time.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you very much for the offer.
Well, and there's an interesting phenomena that happens where, if you are the one that is sought after, right? Because
Yeah.
the United States at this point also wants to talk to China. It's been made very clear by
Yeah.
the amount of officials that have come to China to try
And been turned down.
been turned down.
Yeah.
When you're turned down, it makes people want you more. Think about dating.
Yeah.
And I know this is geopolitics, but humans are humans.
Yeah.
When someone doesn't want to be your friend, when someone doesn't want to talk to you, when someone doesn't want to go on a date with you, what do? That person is the person who has the leverage. They have the power.
Yeah.
And so it seems to me like there's absolutely a power play.
Well, I'm sure.
Going
I'm
on
sure.
here.
Oh, China's not. They are smart enough to know how things move diplomatically on the global stage,
Yeah.
but also China realizing that time has come for it now to stand on an equal footing and say no when it wants to say no.
Right.
And this is exactly what we're seeing. That does not mean China's not going to meet with you. No, they will.
Right.
They will. Mark my word on it. They will. Just for now, they are taking their time.
Yeah.
And second, they are evaluating the importance of why will I grant the Secretary of State the floor or the audience to meet with the Chinese officials, let alone he's not going to meet with President Xi.
Yeah.
Because that was the argument I made as to when President Zelensky, President Zelensky had a conversation with, and I said it will be a mistake of China if President Xi will end up meeting with the President comedian Zelensky.
Yeah.
It made perfect sense. Not that the Chinese heard me and told President Xi don't do it. They end up sending just a delegation. That's all. So it's the same thing. And I think China understand where those dynamics are, and they play in it accordingly. And I'm not surprised at all. I'm not surprised.
Well, and so as I was actually reading through the comments, there are a few comments that basically said that, the working conditions in China are, so much better than, number one, than they were, and number two, than here in the United States. So I sort of want to make clear what I was talking about, because, it's the internet. And so of course there's going to be comments about how wrong I am about whatever,
which is okay.
It's the way it is, right?
Yeah.
The deal is that, yes, that is true right now. But it's important to put things in context, and it's important to see how things were built, not right or wrong. Because like I said, I don't know what's right or wrong about that situation, because the result is that the working conditions are infinitely better, right? The working conditions are fantastic right now in a lot of cases. I'm not going to say in all cases because I don't know that. But in a lot of cases, it's substantially better. Right. And in a lot of cases, it's substantially better than here in the US. Although, to be clear, the working conditions here in the United States there are many working conditions that are fantastic. So I'm not, that's, so I don't want people going around thinking, oh, the working conditions in the US are terrible. That's not the case. But what I am saying is that when you look at how they got there, it's important to look at the entire picture. Not just where you are now, but where did you come from? How did you get there? And like I said, I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I am just saying that it's very important to look at the entire picture of something, the entire history of something, instead of just looking at where you are right now.
But to them it worked, and they seems to be okay with that. And
I'm not saying anything about
and
that.
they are feeling the result. They are seeing the results of it. That's
right.
It's just because also for us in the US, this notion of the climate change and this nonsense, I will call it nonsense. It's a hypocrisy. I mean, the people who are calling for this climate change are the ones who are jetting from one continent to the next.
Yeah.
Well, if you are to talk about this climate change, start with yourself first.
Right.
You're the billionaire with the private jet just flying all over.
Absolutely.
Come on.
Absolutely.
So to me, that's a hypocrisy at the highest order.
Yeah.
How can we say to people, do this and do that, and you don't even do it? There's something called you lead by example.
Right.
So in China's case, when they made that decision decades ago, that they will be willing to go through that to build their country, they were okay with it. And apparently it worked out for them.
Yeah.
Do they have issues, environmental, whatever? I don't know. I'm not an environmental scientist, and I can't speak of something.
I
don't know.
This is just in the chat right now from Steph. Thank you for making this point. I made this point earlier, but to add to this, it is American companies who, and not just American, Western companies who sent the dirty jobs to China to do that.
Yeah.
And this is exactly what you're saying. This is actually my biggest issue with the climate change situation.
Yeah.
Is so, for example, natural gas got reclassified as green.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
While
Yeah.
nuclear power plants are being shut down, right?
Yeah.
We shut down the Keystone Pipeline. Joe Biden shut down the Keystone Pipeline. It was one of the first things he did when he came into office,
Yeah.
which made us dependent on foreign oil. It didn't cut the amount of need that we had for oil.
Yeah.
It just made us dependent on other people for it. So that pollution is still being put in the environment.
Yeah. How about now? What did they win in Ireland?
Yeah.
By killing all the cows.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So because the red meat, we all know it's hypocrisy. It is hypocrisy.
It's interesting that they're not going after factory farming is what causes problem. It's a horrible environment for the animals. It's a horrible environment for people.
The GMO stuff, yes.
And oh my God.
Yeah. It's to me that's why I said I use the term, and I'm very careful with my words. That's why I use the term hypocrisy.
Yeah.
They're saying one thing and doing another. So and to me, I looked at it because I'm doing the research, reading about how China moved. Yeah, they made that conscious decision back then that they were taking a coal from Australia. Australia produces so much, right?
Yeah.
And they were doing, Australia was fine with that because they were making tons of money out of that.
Right.
So all of a sudden, they decide to embark on a wrong policy that just shut down everything. So China was okay with doing the work. They built into it. And it seems to be, to me, that's how I look at it. So same decision for our corporations when they made the decision to ship all this is why any politician who says, well, I'm bringing manufacturer here, it's a lie.
We just don't have the infrastructure
It's a lie.
for that yet.
It's a lie. That's why even this chip manufacturer that's going to be in Arizona, that ain't going to work.
Not only that,
ain't
they're
gonna work.
not capable of producing the same quality of chips that is produced in Taiwan. So, there really is a lot of hypocrisy going on.
So.
Okay.
Well, guys,
well over our
I know.
hour.
So we hope you guys find this very, very informative.
Yeah.
And we look forward to seeing you next week. So remember, just send us some comments or topics rather. What would you like us to talk about? And we will do it. Yeah. So as always, prepare yourself for changing world order. Till next time, guys. Bye-bye.